Okay, I believe we are streaming. Let me double check. Yes, we are streaming. Virus and economy debate. Okay, hi. So, my position is indeed that the economy, the economic harms of this quarantine, this general quarantine, outweigh the benefits of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so do you agree with the statement I just said?
Well, what I just said is, my position is that the economic harms of the quarantine outweigh the benefits of it. The overall harms, not just economic.
So given that you don't want us to quarantine, right? Do you believe that there are risks besides the mortality rates
Yes.
that is caused? Yeah, so do you also believe that there's economic like there could also be a recession from simply not quarantine as well because there's a 2% death rate, there's people dying, and
Okay.
that's going to
Well,
hurt the
I've addressed the 2% death rate before. That's 2%.
yeah.
The 2% of the worst cases die. Okay, 2% of the worst cases die.
Yeah, but just
Let me
because you
plug this
don't
back
die
in. Hold
doesn't
on.
mean you don't suffer from long-term, like potentially permanent lung issues as well.
Okay,
It just
so
means that, yeah.
so are we preventing people from getting this disease with this quarantine? Are we
Yeah, we're
slowing the spread, or are we actually making it so that a lot of people who would otherwise have it don't get it?
we're basically stopping the spread from yeah, stopping the spread from everyone having it.
Okay, so what's going to stop? Are we going to stay quarantined forever? What's going to stop people from spreading it once we stop being quarantined?
Well, the idea is that we slow the exponential rate of the virus, and so I mean it's obviously
So you're not going
there's
to
going to
actually stop people from getting it. You're just going to have them get it at a later time.
no, you're not stopping from people from getting it. Well, yeah, you're gonna stop. I'm not saying that people aren't gonna get it once the quarantine's gonna stop, but it's gonna be massively less than if you did not have the quarantine at all.
So you're going to have fewer people getting it in total. Yes.
Well, yeah, fewer people getting in
Okay. So,
total.
but I don't
And
understand.
well, the idea is to stop it.
Okay, but if it's so contagious that
It's
that
not that contagious. It's not airborne.
it is airborne,
No, it's not.
why are people wearing masks then?
It's prevent from like sneezing, just people from like fluids that would come out of your nose and mouth to onto other people. I mean, there's people saying that you shouldn't wear masks if it doesn't prevent you from getting it, but it prevents you from spreading it to other people.
So if it's not airborne, why are we quarantining? How does it spread?
It's 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 it spreads through like it spreads through how bacteria spreads, like through yeah, there has to be some touch, like for example, if I sneeze on you,
So I mean,
and,
couldn't we
and
avoid that without quarantining? That doesn't seem necessary to quarantine. We just have to take basic precautions not to get fluids on each other. I go through many days, most of my life, without getting anybody else's fluids on me except for maybe my girlfriend's.
I don't think you could really say that because you don't. I mean, it's like that, but the particles. I mean, the viruses is still easily spread. You can't see whether or not you are spreading it,
Okay, but
which is harmful.
is it airborne or not?
It's not airborne, unless
So
I'm wrong.
okay, so
I'm pretty sure it's not.
it might be airborne. I think it is airborne, frankly, which is the only possible way you could even begin to justify a quarantine like this.
Well, it says that no one can agree on that, so
So, okay, if we don't know whether it's airborne or how it's spread, then why would we want
it
to
makes it
quarantine?
even more dangerous, which means we should quarantine because we don't understand the
Annie,
virus.
though, Annie, how does what we don't know make it more dangerous?
It's because if we don't know, we can't take the risk.
But we don't
We
know.
have to
I
take
mean,
extra precautions. Exactly. We need to take extra precautions.
But Annie, what we don't know could be that it's much less harmful than we think, much more
Yeah,
difficult it
but
could be.
you
But
have to think about the potential risk.
okay, but Annie, listen. We need to know. Let's just concede your point on your side here, really easily. Let's
Okay.
just concede that it's extremely contagious. That's one of the reasons why we need to quarantine. You'd want that to be the case if you're going to argue in favor of quarantine, that it be extremely contagious. But the problem is,
Well, I'm not. Okay.
after the quarantine, then you're not actually stopping people from getting it. You're just flattening the curve, right? Now that's what everybody says. They're just flattening the curve to prevent overrunning of the hospitals. But why is it that global depression is justified by a hospital overrun when we could simply throw a fraction of those resources into generating more hospital beds and more ventilators and things like that?
Well, could you agree that prevention is better than treatment, and that economically it would be easier for us
I mean,
to
economically,
prevent?
there's no disputing that the worst thing we could possibly do is what we've done economically, create massive global depression.
Well, yeah.
So the question is, does this justify the massive global depression? Does it justify it? If so, why? What is unique about this virus that justifies the massive global depression and all the ensuing harms?
Because I don't. Well, none of us sees it as permanent. The global depression, we don't see it as permanent. We just see it as, of course, it's not good, obviously.
So,
but
so
the markets go.
how long should the average unemployed homeless family expect to remain homeless before things pick up again?
Well, again, I'm not like an official. I'm not here to say like, oh, this is the amount of time.
Okay,
But obviously,
but hey, you're advocating in favor of a policy that makes people homeless. Shouldn't you be able to
yeah.
explain to them how long they're going to be homeless for?
I'm not saying that the government should just quarantine and just leave the homeless people homeless. Like,
Oh no,
obviously,
I'm saying people are
they
going
should
to
be involved in the process in
listen.
helping the homeless people.
But hear me. I'm saying that people who now have homes and jobs have lost their jobs, and they will lose their housing because they cannot afford it anymore. Now, what I'm saying is, you've indicated that sooner or later they'll get another job because the economy will pick back up. Now, you're convinced enough that you're going to get benefits from this quarantine that it justifies you making these people unemployed and homeless. So explain to them, please, how long they should expect to be unemployed and homeless for before the economy picks back up again. Because you said it wasn't permanent.
Okay, so I'm not. Okay, so what you're saying is that the government should not do anything, just tell people to quarantine and not help people who are homeless.
No, I'm not
Obviously,
saying
there
that.
are.
I'm saying the government should provide these stimuli. They're necessary now because of the terrible decision that was made about the quarantine. Okay, terrible decision has justified now. It required the government to involve some sort of stimulus. The problem is that's using all the resources that the government has, and they can't simply print more money to make more resources. That causes inflation. The increased amount of currency that enters the economy every year has to represent an actual increase in wealth generated by the work of the people. That increase in wealth is no longer occurring because nobody's working.
Okay, but your entire argument is based at the fact that quarantining people will lead to economic depression, which will make homeless people stay homeless. I mean, people to lose their jobs, right? But you're also agreeing with me that the government can help those people, can provide benefits for those people, so that they don't have. I mean, the quarantine.
The government can help some. The government can use the resources that it has to help. To help some, true. But remember, the government now no longer is getting tax revenue. Why? Because nobody's working and earning money. So where's the money that they're going to give out going to come from?
Well, so first of all, it's not going to be an entire year thing. So they still have to pay. This is just for people who can't afford to provide free food, first of all. And then there are, like in my state, they do give benefits for people who earn a certain low income.
Listen, I'm not saying it's impossible to help remedy some of the economic harms of this. It is possible. But nevertheless, those costs are real. That money that we're spending on helping people stay out of being homeless could have been spent on something else. Now, I want you to explain to me how come this incredibly massive, resource-consuming disaster of global depression is justified by the amount of good you're doing with the quarantine. So explain to me what specifically about this virus justifies this outrageously out of proportion response.
Can we
So
join the debate?
Okay, let Anchor Jason Blood tag in. Go ahead, Anchor Jason Blood. I've been asking you this
Yeah,
all day.
so-
Please answer the question.
Yeah, I know. So I think like one of the reasons that I feel that you don't understand how contagious this virus
but
is.
answer the
Making-
question, please. Answer the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
What is
I'm
it about?
making- So one of the like first of all, this is a this is much more deadlier than we expected. It's highly contagious. If you look at the graph of all the global sort of pandemics that have happened because of a bacteria or a virus, you'll find that this virus is unique because it is much more contagious than, let's say, your influenza, but at the same time it's also kind of very deadly for a certain age group of people. And if you let this, like, if you don't have the quarantine, I think that this will eventually, we don't know how it's going to turn out in the future, and this will eventually lead to maybe the demise of many more old people, and
Okay, so-
which may cause the economy to be in the dire state for a much longer period of time. That's why I personally believe.
No, but listen, hold on a second. First of all, the fact that old people may die later, more old people than we think are going to die, there's not a direct link to economic harm there. That there is with stopping perfectly able-bodied people from working.
No. So like the thing is that the only solution we have right now to contain this virus is to slow it down, slow it enough so that the curve gets flattened. And
So
that's
how-
what every country in the world is trying to aim.
But hold on. So is the same number of total people going to get it just over a longer period of time? Is that the plan here?
No. But
No.
But if you listen, if you're gonna quarantine it properly, then you would stop the spread of the virus completely, or stop the numbers.
So is that
the
going to
spread-
happen? So is that going to
Which
happen?
is going to happen?
yeah,
You're wrong,
ideally
because-
it's going to happen. It
Because
should
you have
happen.
people
That's the
that
whole
Korea-
reason.
Okay, hold on. You
feedback in
guys,
Korea-
stop. Now, listen, Anchor Jason Blood, you accuse me of yelling, but right now you're not being reasonable at all.
I'm sorry. That's my fault. I'm really sorry.
So, look, here, listen to me. Now, I'm asking you a question. Are you confident that this approach that we're taking is going to ultimately mean that there are many millions of people who otherwise would have had the virus who don't have it after the quarantine? That in fact we'll find a way to stop it. That it will no longer continue to spread after the quarantine.
Yeah, I think so. Like, yeah,
So
definitely.
what stops it from
That's-
continuing? So wait, but what stops it from continuing to spread after the quarantine?
So the thing is that so the most important thing is that when you don't have enough number of people coming out, in infections coming out every day, so it's essentially like one person, like the spread is slowing down, and eventually the number of people who get in contact with it, they will just die out. This has been seen in like
Okay, but
all
Anchor
the
Jason Blood, let me ask you a question. Now, one of the central theses here on the side of those who favor the quarantine is that because there's no immunity to this at all, that it will rip through everybody in the population for sure, and that even a small group of people who are infected can infect the whole world. So how are we going to know that we've extinguished this disease? Hold on, you listen now. How are we going to know? How are we going to know that we've extinguished this disease entirely? The only possible way that we can know that we can be safe after the quarantine is that if we extinguish it entirely, right? Because even a very small population can infect the whole rest of the world again. We just repeat this whole cycle again, right?
No, so that's one hypothesis that you have in mind. But if we have evidence from the previous outbreaks and pandemics that eventually when you have eventually when you have enough number of people, the curve has flattened enough, then you just don't have enough spread of the virus, and it eventually sort of gets controlled and contained. And yeah, you're right that you can have a second outbreak.
Okay, so you're saying, hold on, Anchor Jason Blood. You're saying,
you listen.
wait, no, but let me. I need clarification. I need clarification on something.
All right,
okay?
go ahead.
You've indicated that after the quarantine, then you can successfully localize it into populations that it won't spread from. So why can't we do that before the quarantine?
Because we could have done that, had it been like, but the government didn't take enough precautions, like you should have, in my previous chats, I've told you that had the government taken enough precautions.
So wait, this isn't enough precautions?
No, no, not now. We could have done it before the nationwide lockdown, nationwide quarantine,
Uh-huh.
if we had controlled the entry and exit of people
Okay,
through
if
the
we
airport.
failed to do it last time, why are you so sure we're going to succeed in doing it
No,
after
no,
the
no. You're
quarantine?
confusing. You're conflating my
No, no,
argument.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
conflating. No, I'm asking you a basic
What you
question.
said. Let me finish.
If you're so
Listen,
sure that we can do it afterwards, why did we fail to do it before?
the way you have to look at the way the virus is spread. The way the virus is spread is because is that in China you had a lot of number of people who got infected, and the right kind of advisory was not issued by the Chinese government, and these people, they flew to different countries. Had China, had the government of
But
China issued a proper advisory, you could have done
Anchor
implemented
Jason Blood, you are not being honest here. Come on, let's think about this.
No, I am
No,
being
no,
honest.
but you listen to me and you think about this for a second. We've got something that's got an incubation period of 14 days for many people who contracted show no symptoms at all, and you're telling me we're going to know enough about where the instances of this disease are after a 2 month long quarantine, for example, that we can actually shut it down and not prevent this from occurring again? You are
No, but
not
it's
being
not
honest. You're not being
about.
honest now.
I'm not. Listen, you're not letting me finish my argument. The first point that I was telling was that if the Chinese government had issued the kind of advisory, and had the governments around the world taken proper precautions, this could have been prevented. The situation that we are in
There
right
are
now.
no precautions that can stop this because of the dynamics of the virus, right? We all agree on
No,
this. The incubation
how
period,
did
the
they
lack of
use?
symptoms. That means we
They
can't
knew,
possibly stop this. It's going to
listen,
just repeat
listen,
again.
listen. They knew about that. The Chinese scientists who discovered
How?
the
But
virus.
no, you tell me how. How are they going to stop it from recurring afterwards? How? What are these proper precautions that you're going to take?
Eventually, listen, they spread from these kind of viruses, especially coronavirus, they spread from the wet markets. So essentially, what I propose is that you got to ban all the wet markets across the world, and if there is,
But what about the
I
people who
don't.
are infected and show no symptoms after the quarantine? Why won't they just simply start spreading the disease again?
So I mean, it's only a 14 period of incubation period. But that's why if you have like a 2 month or a 3 month or a 4 month lockdown period, and you see that the number of people who are coming out, who are getting infected on a daily basis is decreasing, you can safely assume that the virus is getting contained.
Okay,
That's the
but
reason.
here's the problem, Anchor Jason Blood. People aren't completely isolated, and there are still people contracting new cases of it. Now, what you have to tell me is you can be very sure that when you're in the quarantine, that nobody has it because just a few people who don't know they have it walking around and spreading it to lots of different people causes the whole thing to happen again, right?
That's why we are doing the quarantine,
So in
nationwide
other words,
quarantine.
you can't. You have no answer for me. You have no answer
No,
for me
but
as to
the question
how.
is
How is the
ridiculous.
question? How is the question? How are you
No,
going to
but
stop it from happening again? You have no answer.
because if you don't have enough people, if you kind of monitor the situation
You
for
only
for
need
2 3 months.
one. You only need one.
No, but one is not gonna like, okay. Let's say even if next, like, you've contained the virus completely, and then there is a similar outbreak, let's say 6 months down the line, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna become this big
How
of a
many
thing. You can
infected Chinese people? How many infected Chinese people caused all of Italy to get it? How many infected
well, I
Chinese
don't
people
know
did
the
it
exact
take?
number of it, but
How
what I'm
many
trying
did
to
it
say is,
take, Anchor Jason Blood? Not
what,
many. Not many.
don't ask those kind of questions, because you got to look up the internet for that.
No,
What I'm
no,
trying to
no,
say,
Anchor Jason Blood, you're not being reasonable. You are not acknowledging the simple
I
truth of
am
the
being
matter.
reasonable,
The
but you're not listening to my
listen to
argument,
me,
my friend.
listen. The justifications for this being so special are also the reasons why this won't work.
Okay, let's turn the topic. So you think that let's not have any quarantine, and like, who's are you willing to take the responsibility of the consequences of the proposal that you're making? Let's say we have no quarantine in a country like Japan, where 35% of the population is above 65 years of age. If we have the mortality rate that we've seen in Italy, we would easily have 50 to 60,000 people dead in no time. You know, are you going to take
I,
responsibility for them?
No, you know who takes responsibility for people in vulnerable populations? Those people. It's obviously the case that when you have a vulnerable population that may suffer death from this thing, that normally doesn't really hurt people very much. Now, it is normally the case that those populations that are particularly vulnerable are the ones that need to isolate and quarantine, not the general population that's
No,
not
you're wrong about
vulnerable.
that, because
Hey,
it's the general
no, no,
population.
but
The
listen,
people.
understand this. You're saying, well, that won't work. The only way we can possibly protect these people is by quarantining everybody. except for necessary services. Oh, well, then that means it's still going to spread enough that once the quarantine
So-
ends, you're going to have the same repeat
So,
cycle
no,
again.
but we can localize.
Anchor, you're not thinking.
So listen,
You're
the
not
point
thinking,
is,
though.
is that no, you're not. Listen. I have a master's in nuclear fusion engineering, so I know a little
But
bit of.
then you
about
should know
science and
better.
stuff.
Then you should know what I'm saying is true.
I know better, and I'm telling you. The problem, the reason this is spread, your point of argument is wrong, is because like these people who do not show any asymptomatic, or they don't show any symptom at all. These people are the ones who actually spread the virus to the vulnerable population that you're talking about. That's
know.
the reason why I need to have.
I know. And you've given me no way in the world in which you can guarantee after the quarantine that we're going to have 0 instances of
No.
it. And
So
those people who show no symptoms are going
I
to
know,
cause the
there is
cycle
no
again.
guarantee.
Anchor.
But,
No, listen, Anchor, please
But-
stop. Listen.
but biology-
Listen,
biology-
hey. What we can't have is you being unfair. Now, you can have one way,
I'm
but you
not being
have
unfair.
no, stop and listen. It is very contagious. You need that point for your side. Unfortunately, you've not given me any way to stop this from happening again. You've simply said
Listen,
if people
that's-
put the
I'm
proper
trying to
protocol.
tell you
No,
that.
stop. You've simply said if you put the proper protocols, but you haven't indicated any protocols that would work.
So I'm telling you that, like, I'm not a virologist, I'm not an epidemiologist.
Okay,
but if you
that's
look at-
bullshit. No.
Listen,
Just you
let
don't
me
know.
finish.
Then you don't know is the answer. Not that you're not an expert.
No. Let me finish. You're just not letting people finish the argument.
Finish it.
See, so in the past we have had similar instances of these kind of pandemics and epidemics, which when the curve got flattened, they got contained, like properly, and now we do not see any instances of that. Those epidemics or those kind of bacterial agents coming back again. So we are assuming also
give me
in
an
this
example?
case, at least we
Can you
are
give
able
me
to
an
contain.
example? Hold on. Example, please.
Example: SARS, MERS.
Okay, so what was
Okay,
different about
and-
SARS and this?
and,
What's different?
and,
What's different about SARS and this?
This is slightly less deadlier than SARS, but more contagious.
Much
know,
more contagious,
like,
right? That's the
much more
difference.
contagious.
Hold on. That's the difference we're going for. Now, we're back to the central question. You have not given me any way in which we can stop the cycle from repeating as soon as the quarantine ends. Can you give me one, please?
It kind of logically makes sense that if you have a quarantine for 4 to 5 months and you do not have new cases coming out, that kind of means like
How
like
many do we need to reinfect the population? How many do we need?
Well, we don't need a lot of, you can have few people and then not a lot of population will get infected, because if you have one case, you can easily track down, like the number of people who with whom he has been in contact with and stuff like that. Also, I think the probability of once we have flattened the curve completely, this thing coming again is kind of very low. And that's something that you're not considering.
Why? Listen to me. No. You're not being honest here, because if in fact it is so don't stop. If in fact it is so easy to stop when they're a fairly localized population, why did every nation in the world fail to do so initially?
Because of the Chinese government did not issue the proper advisory, and it just kept spreading.
Okay. You talk about one government giving the improper advisory. Why did no government successfully isolate the population once they realized they wanted to isolate that population?
Oh, there are actually so many other places the countries that were able to successfully isolate. Like they didn't even. Okay, for example, Turkmenistan or Russia, they made a complete, like, they don't allow people to enter. They stopped allowing people to enter from China and other countries that were heavily infected, and now the cases are very low. Whereas in other countries that did not, they took it very lightly. The cases have risen to an exponential.
Okay, all right. So let's say you're right. Let's say you're right, and in fact, we can bet the world economy on the fact that you're right, that we won't just repeat this cycle, that we will find a way to shut this shit down. Okay. No, let's say you're right for the sake of argument. Okay. We're saying you're right for the sake of argument. Now, still, you fail to justify the expense.
See, whose life is important? Like, I think it's very subjective. For you, it's about the.
No. Comparables, my friend, comparables. We spend resources to prevent deaths. Are we spending resources wisely to prevent these deaths? In other words, are we getting more death prevention per dollar this way or in some other way?
You are not the one to decide, like who's gonna die.
Hey, look, remember,
Have an
the
opinion about it. You have an opinion about it.
multiple
It's up to the
problems.
government and the nations to decide what population that they want to save or not. And governments
Finite,
have taken.
finite resources, Anchor Jason Blood, and multiple problems. Is this a good use of resources? Don't tell me it's up to each nation to decide. You're arguing it is a good use of resources. That in fact, the cost-benefit analysis here, the number of lives saved or benefits gained by expending the entire world's economy on this, is justified. Now, I want you to explain why.
I think it's justified because like the nations are comprised of people. They're comprised of people, and it's people's lives that matter. And if
I agree. I agree, but you don't care about what happens to people after the quarantine. Why don't you care about that?
Care about the people. Like I think the government should take care of. Care
where's the wealth coming from? Nobody's working, Anchor Jason Blood. Where's the wealth coming from?
Like the governments have to spend resources. It's a pandemic. It's a goddamn pandemic.
Where do they get their resources from?
Governments get the resources from. Yeah, exactly. I understand that the tax.
There's nobody working and earning money. There's no tax dollars.
But there are many ways to work. Like I'm not saying that everyone is.
Anchor Jason Blood, now you're just being disingenuous. You're just being disingenuous.
Listen, I'm not being disingenuous. I am working. A lot of people in Japan. Most of the people who are
being disingenuous. You're being
disingenuous.
Yes, you are. You're not acknowledging the realities of the economic harms. You're pretending as though governments can be socialist and solve the problem. Socialism doesn't work. Guys, socialism doesn't work. Hey.
I'm just telling you
you're being disingenuous. You're not being honest about the fact that there's a finite number of resources.
You can shout as much as you want. It's not gonna change.
No, Anchor, I don't want to shout at you. I want you to listen to me. You're not being responsive. Hey, you're not being responsive. Now, I have made a clear point. No, stop, please. Stop. You're not being responsive. I've made a clear point that you need to provide a mechanism by which we actually stop this thing from repeating. You've utterly failed to do so. You've said that, in fact, if you could talk to the virologist, they might give you some information about it. So
I never said that. Listen.
You're making this advocacy in the absence of any reason to believe it's going to work. That's the truth.
Listen, no, I told you, I gave you my argument that we have seen this thing happen in the past, and it was by proper quarantine measures.
And you also made the argument that the reason this is different is because this is vastly more contagious than that one, and the same rules
I didn't say vastly more contagious. It is more contagious than MERS and SARS, but it's probably on the same level as Spanish influenza that happened, after World War I. And the way we were able to tackle Spanish influenza was by doing proper quarantine, lockdowns and stuff. You can easily see there is an example. I was reading about it a day before yesterday, where a city in the US that actually took the precautions was able to prevent the spread of the virus and had way less deaths, whereas the city of New York that didn't take any precautions, have witnessed a lot of people dying. So we have seen this from the past experiences that in cases of pandemics like this, proper quarantine is the only way to flatten the curve and contain the virus. And that's why the governments around the world and virologists around the world are suggesting this.
So what do you think the difference is between the Spanish flu and this virus?
What do you mean by I'm telling you that it's probably as contagious as the Spanish influenza virus. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, and you're saying that it's as contagious, right? Does it have the same incubation period? Hold on. I have questions for you to answer. Does it have the same incubation period?
I don't know about that. Do you know about that?
Now, let me ask you this. Do we have an example where we shut down the world economy before and saw what the impacts of that are?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean by that? The impact's going to be bad. We all know that,
No, we've never done anything like this before. We've had plenty hold on. Let's be honest here. We've had plenty. Listen. There are plenty of threats to humanity. Plenty of threats to life. War, famine, all kinds of shit, right? We have never, ever in the history of humankind shut down the entire world to save lives. So tell me exactly stop and let me ask my question. Now tell me precisely what justifies this incredibly unique response. What is so uniquely terrifying about this virus that justifies this incredibly uniquely abundant response?
Sir, first of all, you're wrong about your question. May I say that very specifically? There have been so many instances in the past where the world economies were nearly, they were shut first Spanish influenza that I already gave an example to you about. World wars, like the World War One, World War Two, nations were shut, continents were not working, and stuff like that was happening in the
And
past.
for Jason
And
Bourne, everybody was doing all kinds of shit during all those periods of time. Nobody was locked down in their
but
house.
people were still dying. There were large swaths
They
of
were
countries.
dying. You're right. You were dying,
Okay.
and we didn't shut down the
And-
entire
and-
world to stop it.
Spanish influenza. You asked a question, let me answer, and then you can give your rebuttal. You know, so the Spanish influenza is one thing. It was highly contagious. It was very deadly. It killed a lot more people than the deaths that have occurred due to coronavirus, and that brought the entire world to a halt. And that's the main reason why virologists are suggesting this kind of quarantine. And
But
yeah, I know
hold
that.
on. Let's clarify about your past example. The main point about the virus, the Spanish influenza, is that most places didn't quarantine in time, and it killed many millions of people, right?
Yeah.
So now you're trying to claim that. Don't stop. Now you're also trying to claim that it was the same thing as now, that we purposely shut down the world economy.
I think this threat is on the
No,
same
you
level.
get one or the other. You don't get both. Is it the same or is it
What?
opposite?
What are you saying? I never said it was opposite. I said
Hey,
it's
no,
the same.
Anchor, listen. You're trying to use the fact that we didn't quarantine in the Spanish flu and it killed millions of people as an argument. And then you're also trying to use the fact that we've already done this. We already responded to by shutting down the world as it was in the Spanish flu. You can't have both. It's either one or the other.
No, what I'm saying is that this has happened in the past. What kind of arguments are you making?
No, I'm making a point. You're trying to claim it for both things. You're saying, it's an example of us shutting down the world economy before.
That's why you're trying not to repeat
Is it an example of us shutting down the world economy before?
Yeah, it is an example. Like the entire nations back then were shut
so
down.
the quarantine didn't work because so many millions of people died,
No,
right?
because they didn't do the quarantine properly.
They didn't shut down the world economy.
What are you trying to talk about? Are
you saying? Hold on, Anchor. Listen. Very simple
No, you
question.
listen.
Hey, no, you're a nuclear physicist, for God's sake. Now listen to me and answer the fucking question. It's very simple.
No, you listen to me.
No, listen. Is it the case that the world? Is it the case? Is it the case that the world shut down for Spanish influenza or failed to? One of the two, not both.
Listen, you're morphing my argument. I'm just saying that.
Anchor, answer the question.
I'm not
Is
gonna
it
answer
the
the
case?
question. I'm
No,
not following
Anchor.
you.
Anchor,
I'm
stop.
not going to follow you up.
Stop. Answer
I'm
the
not gonna-
question. I asked
I'm
you
not
a
gonna
very
answer the
simple
question.
question. Answer it. Is it the case that the world shut down like this time with Spanish flu, or that it failed to do so and lots of people died? Which is the case?
The world failed. Okay, yeah, it failed to do.
Okay, thank you.
And we had a lot of millions of us. Okay, we have, and that's why we are not trying to repeat that.
Okay, so
And I
then
know
you don't have an example where we before shut down the world, then, do you?
But shutting down the world it's
No,
kind
but
of one of
answer the
concepts-
question, though. But answer the
Oh
question.
my God! So let me finish. Can
No,
you
just
let me
answer it. You don't have an example, right? Because it's not happened
how you
before,
argue
right?
the case.
Look, there's
You're
no
just
disputing
trying
this
to-
has not happened before. Anchor,
Dude,
there's no disputing this has not happened before.
the entire lockdown of the economy like this.
Yeah.
I mean, on some level, it has happened before.
No,
On some
Anchor,
level,
you're
it
being
has happened
dishonest again. It's
Yeah, I'm
not
not being
true.
dishonest.
That's not true. This has never happened
But-
before.
before. Listen. There were places
I'm done. You're not being honest. I'm done. Goodbye. Thanks for watching, everybody.